Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Mythic Monday, where we take a look at Mythic Plus through the eyes of healers. This week we're going to be taking a look at next week's affixes, the current healer meta, the current dungeon difficulty, and the random thought of the week. How will these Preservation Evoker nerfs affect the class coming in 10.0.7? So let's get right into it. Let's start off with this week's Mythic Plus affixes: Fortified, Sanguine, Volcanic, Thundering. My initial reaction was that this seemed like a pretty good week to push Fortified keys. Interestingly though, when I looked back at how keys went as a whole the last time we did this affix combination, it was literally F tier worst week for keys we've had all season. Now a lot has changed since we saw this combo back in week 3. We're much more geared, there's been a ton of dungeon nerfs, we should hopefully know our specs and dungeons a little bit better, but still, F tier? This really comes down to how well your group manages fortified mobs with Sanguine. Keep knockbacks and displacements in mind when you're forming your groups this week, and tanks, keep those mobs moving when health bars start to drop, as a big chunkster fortified bathing in Sanguine for just a few seconds can really do a number on your dungeon timer. I can definitely remember a few instances of Sanguine being an absolute pain this dungeon pool last time around, especially in places like Halls of Valor and Azure Vault. Now, both of those dungeons have seen some pretty significant HP nerfs since week 3, but your success or failure on this Sanguine week is going to come down to how much your group is able to reduce Sanguine healing on mobs. Looking at the healer meta, the only thing to really note that's any difference between the last couple of weeks is that Shaman is continuing to kind of creep its way past the other mid-tier specs. I think it would be really interesting to see what this tier list would look like if the season were to start over with the current class balance in place. I do think Preservation would still be on top, but I think an argument could be made that the only reason Druid is still as high as it is that there are already a ton of people committed to pushing high keys as Druid when 10.0.5 dropped. Not to say that Druid isn't still very, very good, but I definitely don't think it's 2 full tiers above these other healers like Resto Shaman and Disc Priest. Before, yes, but now, definitely not. Personally, I'm leveling my Shaman and enjoying burning the toesies off of mobs with Acid Rain in anticipation of them making a big comeback in Dragonflight Season 2, but that's a topic for another video. On to dungeon difficulty, and I think this is about as clear cut as it's going to get. Halls of Valor has some terrible interactions with Grievous Tyrannical, making it the nightmare key of the week. And similarly, Algathar Academy has some tough Grievous bosses as well as some really scary bursty moments if you don't have Mass Dispel handy. Overall, no big surprises from a dungeon difficulty standpoint, and I think healers and everyone else are going to be really happy to see bursting Grievous Tyrannical week go back to whatever hole it crawled out of. Okay, so let's get into the random thought of the week, which isn't really too random this week, and it's the new Preservation Evoker nerfs that were just recently added to patch 10.0.7 on the PTR. If you haven't seen them yet, then here they are. Temporal Anomaly Absorption value reduced by 20%. Resonating Sphere now applies Echo to the first 4 allies hit, down from 6. Temporal Compression can now be gained from casting Tip the Scales, and empowered spells cast with Tip the Scales no longer consume stacks of Temporal Compression. This is in addition to the changes they've already added to Preservation, which is this: Ouroboros has been redesigned. Casting Echoes increases the healing of your next Emerald Blossom by 30%, stacking up to 5 times before Emerald Blossom and Dream Breath increase the healing of Echo, and Fluttering Seedlings healing has been increased by 20%. So I've had a number of people ask about this on stream, and I wanted to put my thoughts out there. I'm a Preservation Evoker main, first of all, and while I do raid here and there, Mythic Plus is the vast majority of what I like to do. So I'm mainly going to address this from an M+ perspective. Clearly the intent here is to nerf the Echo style Temporal Anomaly build and nudge players toward an Emerald Blossom build. Whether or not that will be a viable build in raid is one thing. The changes to TA and Resonating Sphere are definitely going to be more impactful in raid, as 6 people don't even exist in M+, and you don't lean on Temporal Anomaly as heavily in M+ as you do raid. From a Mythic Plus standpoint, I see Preservation being very, very good after these changes still, but they are going to sting a bit more than the 5% overall healing nerf just got recently. TA shielding does make up a pretty solid portion of your healing in M+, so losing 20% of that is nothing to ignore. But the Resonating Sphere nerf is going to make it so Evokers can't rely on their TA as heavily in M+, meaning one TA cast will not automatically echo your whole team. So that sounds kind of bad, but let me tell you why I'm not that worried about it. It wasn't actually that long ago where there was quite a bit of argument in the Evoker community about whether or not TA was even worth taking in Mythic Plus at all. And a lot of us, myself included, stay away from Temporal Anomaly for a really long time until rather recently. And we put keys just fine. In fact, Evoker was still an S tier healing spec over that period. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of an adjustment, but you'll be able to cast a TA and then manually echo one person if you're just trying to get echoes out. I really don't think this is a sky is falling change. While I'm not usually a fan of nerfs and would rather see the other healers brought up, one thing I've learned as I've spent more and more time on other healers over the course of this season is that, well, Evokers have it really, really good. After runs on other healers, I'd log on my Evoker and just kind of think to myself, wow, Evokers have literally everything. So I'm not surprised at all by this nerf, and I would admit it's probably needed. I will say this on the other hand though, Emerald Blossom is a lousy spell. Emerald Blossom is a button that feels bad and wonky to press. It's a player targeted spell that feels like it should be ground target. It has a weird delay before it goes out. And one way personally to fast track me away from Preservation Evoker and choose to main something else in Season 2 would be to necessitate going Emerald Blossom build. The Echo build is a lot more fun and interesting to play. Emerald Blossom build is not fun and definitely something I'm not interested in playing personally. So I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on these Evoker nerfs. What do you think? Are they too much? Should it have been something else? What do you think about the healer meta, the dungeon difficulty, next week's affixes? Is this a push week or not? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section. If you made it this far, I always appreciate a thumbs up on the video, guys. Subscribe if you want to see more of my content in the future, and you can always check me out right here on YouTube on stream live Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. We have a lot of fun. Come ask your questions, whatever you want to do. I'd love to see you there. So until next time, happy healing.